Most of us begin our attempt at building a life in public school. And here's a funny thing: when you're in public school, you are being taught by uninspired teachers. Very unlikely that you will be inspired by someone who is uninspired. The teacher may be the first in your life to ask you, what do you want to grow up and be? The crime comes in the way they condition you to think about your answer to this most critical of questions. You were conditioned to answer in terms of a job title. Lawyer. I want to be a doctor. Teacher. Job titles. That's how you were conditioned to answer this question when you were asked by your teacher, and then you were asked by your parents and your family as you're growing up. And in your mind, you're now starting to identify your progression, being that you're going to mature and grow into this job title. But what if, when you were asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? What if you said, I want to be a boss or a luminary or I want to be happy? Well, that wouldn't fit the narrative very well. That would be completely outside of the scope of what your teacher is trying to get you to say. Yes, your teacher is asking you a question and then putting your thinking within a box such that you can only answer by providing a job title. If you were to say, I want to be a boss, your teacher would they'd be perplexed. Do you know why they'd be perplexed? Because the teacher is a school addict. Yes, a teacher is a school addict. A teacher is the one who went to school as a child, enjoyed it so much, or they were just familiar with school because they've been in it their whole life. They say, well, now I'm out of school, I might as well go back, this time as a teacher, because they're scared to go get into something else. They're school addicts. These are the ones who were probably good at school. They enjoyed the schoolwork aspect. This was the teacher's pet, probably. And what they know is school. So when they ask, what do you want to be? And you say, I want to be a lawyer, they can compute that, because then they can tell you, oh, you want to be a lawyer? Well, you need more school. Now you need to go get a bachelor's in school, then go to law school, and then you're a lawyer. Or if you say, I want to be a doctor, oh, I know what to do. You need more school. Go to medical school, and then you become a doctor. Oh, I want to be a teacher. Oh, I am a teacher. I know what to do. You need more school. Get a master's degree at the school of education. So it works perfectly with their simple minds and their boxed in thinking. Yes. Yeah, these teachers are school addicts. All they know is school. That's all they can really recommend to you. Most of them lack life experience. They've not ever taken a risk. And if you told them, I want to be a boss, well, they don't even know what that is. And there's no school they can recommend for you. You tell them you want to be a luminary. Well, they're an uninspired person. A luminary is one who inspires. They can't even compute that. You tell them you want to be happy. Uh-oh, you've really crossed the line, because that doesn't relate to job titles. That doesn't relate to money. That doesn't relate to the rat race you've been placed into. That doesn't relate to being a factory worker or being an employee. Being happy is something they can't at all wrap their head around. And here's the funny thing: the most important thing for you and I on a regular basis is being happy. But remember this: when you went through elementary and high school, did you ever take a course on self-management? Yes, a course on how to manage the human self. How do I manage my physical health? How do I manage my mindset? How do I cope in a challenging world? How do I embrace risk? How do I deal with failure and disappointment? Did your school ever have character education? No. So if you say, I want to be happy, which is perfectly fine to want to grow up and be happy, and I'll tell you why. Because most of you weren't raised happy. I know it sounds strange. I repeat, most of you were not raised happy, and I'm going to get into it. School never taught you how to be happy, which is something that we all want. If you are completely devoid of happiness, you may become what we call depressed, or what's worse, you might become clinically depressed. And men, unlike women, we tend to actually get things done. You see, women, they'll say that they feel like offing themselves, but mostly they don't do it. Males have the highest rate of actually doing it. You see, I don't want to use the word. That's You're a man of your word. There's no analog, there's no woman of your word. So when you're not happy, you end up offing yourself. We see that there is a growth in males offing themselves because they have not figured out the key to happiness. And when I say many of you were not raised happy, what I mean is you were raised with a single mother in some cases. Your mother's stressed. She has 3 jobs. Or you were raised with 2 parents, which is a beautiful thing, but your parents were arguing and bickering among each other, mostly about money.
St. White said, my school never talked about career interests. We were too busy studying the different genders.
Oh, no. That's what it's come to. That hurts my heart. I thought there were only 2. Apparently, my school screwed up. The funny thing is that you think that what you're learning in school is true because it's adults and positions of authority that are teaching you this. And one thing I want to remind you guys of, because you don't know and you hadn't been taught it, did you know that in Germany, which, mind you, was the most advanced country in the world? Yes, during the Nazi era, Germany was the most advanced country in the world. They had the best of everything. They had the foremost anthropologists, the foremost physicists. They had the best composers. They had the best logicians and philosophers, Hegel, Engels, Marx, all these guys, Germans. They were brilliant people. And then when the Nazis took over, they changed the school system, which is typical of governments that are fascist in nature. The paradigmatic fascists, the Italians who invented fascism, the concept itself, the first thing they did was change the educational system. This was done under a guy named Giovanni Gentile. Yes, he was the philosopher of fascism, and he changed the school systems. I want you to understand this because what they did was, in Italy, they started teaching fascism. In Germany, they started teaching Nazism. They stopped teaching regular math, and all the math that they taught was related to warfare because they were conditioning the boys and girls to be ready for war. Yes. And then when they would teach social studies and history, they taught nationalistic history to make you proud of being a German. They also taught you who was good and who was bad. So in social studies, they taught you about what a Jew is according to their definition. They started to change the definition of words. And in science class, they taught junk science, explaining why certain groupings of human beings are unworthy of life. The Negroid, the African, they had all this fake science, which turned out to be pseudoscience, but they taught it like it was the truth. That's the same thing as that is happening to this youngest generation. Yes.
Okay, we have Zay. He did come in with more tuition. I have this read. He said, what person was your biggest mentor when you were on your grind during after college? Are they still a role model and source of guidance for you?
During college, I can't say that I was really like working hard. College is the easiest thing you'll ever do. You might not realize it while you're in college. So I hope you guys are all aware of that. It's the easiest thing you will ever do. After college, I had a number of mentors assigned to me when I was running a technology company, because usually when you get an investor, the investor realizes, man, this guy's like 21, 22, 20, 23, 24, 25, 26. They've never seen real money. And I'm writing them a big check. All of a sudden they're getting a windfall of 25,000 to $250,000. So they give you a mentor to help. And one of the unlikely mentors I had, I don't want to say his name because he's very famous and wealthy, and he probably doesn't want to be connected to this YouTube channel. But one thing I learned most from him was that your standards matter the most, meaning it doesn't matter what everyone else thinks or everyone else's standards out there. I remember when I had pitched him my business the first time, he told me it was a terrible pitch. Now, mind you, up to this point, I'd won every single pitch contest I'd ever gotten into. Every single one. I'd never taken second place. I'd never taken anything less than first. And then I pitched it to him one-on-one in his office. He told me it was rubbish, which is to say that people who are excellent have different standards. And so even though all the average people, all the judges had told me my pitch was phenomenal, the dude who had 100 million told me it was garbage. Standards are different. That was the most important thing. Is he still a source of guidance? Yeah, once you learn something, you should never forget it if it's good information. Today, my source of knowledge is all the great men throughout history trying to outperform them, trying to be greater than Alexander the Great, huh? Trying to take over more land than Julius Caesar, huh? Trying to be a greater spiritual guide than anyone you could name. No, those are my peers. Those are the people I want to outperform.
Okay, we have
So, as I was saying, the teacher who asks you, what do you want to grow up and be? They're conditioning you around the job title concept. However, humankind is fulfilled not by jobs, but by feelings. We might seek a feeling of importance, a feeling of being needed, a feeling of being loved, a feeling of being admired. And let me break that down for you. When someone says that they want to be a doctor, they're probably seeking a feeling of being needed, or they're seeking a feeling of importance or prestige. When someone says they want to be an attorney, they're seeking a feeling of being respected or maybe being feared or being empowered. There's always a feeling behind what human beings are doing or pursuing. But the teacher is too simple in the way they approach things, such that they don't help you unpack that so that you can understand the self and be rightly guided based on what you actually want.
Miles said, "Peace to the saints. I hate the 9 to 5 rat race, but will have to endure it until I get my online business up and running. Very frustrating time at 24 years old, but your example is daily inspiration."
I appreciate that. And don't be frustrated, for this is life. The process is as much a part of life as the outcome, which is to say, you must find a way to enjoy yourself. And so, a question you might ask yourself is, how can I enjoy this process? How can I accelerate this process? And there'll be some things that you miss. You see, for example, when you go into entrepreneurship, and you don't get a check every 2 weeks, you're going to miss that. I promise you, you're going to miss being able to predict how much money you're going to have every 2 weeks. You're going to miss that. So, I mean, until you start making money every day, which will take a while. So, enjoy these parts of life. One thing that I'm always entertained by is people often ask me, Marquette, how do you make money? How do you make $1 million? What job should I have? Where should I go to school? What should I study? No one ever asked me, how do you, how can you be happy? Because that's what we all want. And I might be the only guy on the internet who realizes this and expresses this on a regular basis. Money is fantastic, but we all want to be happy. The sad thing is that some people have been tricked into thinking that money is the ticket to happiness, which it is not. I can verify that for you.
Okay. We have Ken sent a cash app and said, "Peace to the saints," comment in the chat. He says, "Peace to the saints intuition. College freshman and purchase Bosch University. For there to be winners, there must be losers.
Yes.
Question: how must one repair a business relationship that was marred due to under delivering?"
That's so funny because I often speak of over, excuse me, under promising and over delivering. Under promise, over deliver. Number one, you have to ask yourself if it's worth recovering. And this applies not only to business relationships, but to familial relationships, to romantic relationships, to friendships. And I'll tell you exactly what I mean. I say you have a young lady that you're dealing with, and you did something to disappoint her, whether it was infidelity or what have you. You could put in a tremendous effort to get her back and get in her good graces. But that would take so long. You would have to grovel and spend so much energy to do that, that it would take less energy to get a new woman, you see. So, first question for yourself is to ask, is it actually worth the squeeze? Which is to say, is the juice you can squeeze out of that orange worth the energy to squeeze it? So, that's the first thing. Number one, is it worth trying to recover the relationship? Will it take too much effort? And number two, generally in business, money talks. So anytime you can deliver financial value, people are going to want to do business with you because they can grow their wealth. That's all people are seeking in business. If you can deliver that, people are going to do business with you. So, firstly, let us understand ourselves as human beings, as whole human beings. And the schooling system does not teach you how to be good at being a human being and managing your emotions and your psyche, or even being disciplined and getting the best out of yourself. It doesn't teach you any of those things. Mostly it just bores you And it might even make you think you're a fool or unintelligent when really you are intelligent. Did you know that when the human mind is bored, it has trouble focusing? How are you going to learn if you're bored? School's a funny place. I am thankful that as a child, I was brave enough to know that I did not want to be a job. I didn't want to be a job. Ultimately, I wanted to be a luminary. So everything that I did, I was always asking myself the underlying question of how does my work in fill in the blank help me inspire people? Because that's what gives me life. That's what makes me feel good. And it's okay that different things make different people feel good about themselves.
But we have Jacob said, is the major I choose in college important? I'm thinking of taking either computer science or SWE or informatics.
Those are all reasonable disciplines. And is the major important? That's like saying, Marquette, I would like to spend the next 3 to 4, or actually 3 to 6, if we're being accurate, the next 3 to 6 years of my life doing one thing mostly. Is it important what I do? Yes, my boy. Yes, your time is critical. So yes, it's very important. And computer science, software engineering, and informatics are all good fields that have significant demand. So I think you'll do well to pick either of those.
Okay, we have Helly9 said, first time catching a live stream, and I recently found out about you. I related to a lot of your videos so far. I've been improving my life a lot lately. I love finding content that fits with my mentality.
Very good to hear. Thank you for sharing that. And do let us know precisely how you came across the content, and wishing you continued success. Thanks for sharing the good news.
On Cash App, we have Irvin said tuition.
Shout out to Irving.
Carry on.
Saints, I'll give you some time to send in your thoughts, questions, comments as we start to wind down. Now, more about school. One of the major things you've been misinformed about school, this is from the critics of school. These are the, for example, you have one imbecile, Gary V. He's like a fraud. He pretends as though he like came from nothing. Oh, I came in, my parents were immigrants, and my dad gave me a business, and like I didn't have to earn the business. I'm a millionaire now, I'm self-made, even though my dad gave me everything, and like I had two good parents. I'm self-made. These liars, and they'll start telling you that school is garbage. Well, is school garbage? No, school's not total garbage. School teaches you some critical things. For example, in university, that's where I learned to A, do research. B, I learned to identify what a credible source is. C, I learned to work very hard. D, I learned to organize people and get outcomes out of people. Those are great skills for life and for business. They also will tell you, oh, the primary school and secondary school, which is the high school system, it teaches you to be a factory worker, show up on time, and follow directions. You're going to be a factory worker going to school. It's no good. Well, actually, um, maybe that's true. Let us remember that factories do need workers. The shirt I'm wearing was produced in a factory. The hat, this microphone, these computers, the monitor, the camera, all produced in factories. Yes, factories have to have human beings, generally speaking. Today, fewer human beings because we have machinery. But school does teach valuable things, and timeliness is a critical thing. There are employers and hiring managers who will not hire you because you were late to an interview. School teaches you how to be detail oriented and to understand assignments. Jobs have a lot of assignments. So school does have utility. One thing I don't want anyone to get confused on is the idea that everyone is suitable to be an entrepreneur. No, a small portion of the human population is really suitable for entrepreneurship. So, school will serve a great number of people. In fact, the majority of people very well. But the issue with school, I'm going to define a couple of those issues, but one of them is that you're studying the wrong thing when you go to university, or the problem is that you went to university when you should have went to Boss University, or you should have not went to university at all. You should have went to a trade school or a vocational college, learn to be a plumber, a welder, a forklift driver, a mortician, things like that. Let's talk about where school sets up your thinking in the wrong way that is detrimental to you. Let's talk about how school conditions you to think and behave in a way that will make you suffer. Number one, what is school about? Grades. In the real world, are there grades? Well, no. The only way to measure if you're winning, generally speaking, is happiness and money. And happiness doesn't have numbers associated with it. So it's really hard to estimate. But money is quite easy. That's how you measure things in the real world. Now ask yourself, when you were in school, how many times did your teacher put money in your hand and say, hey, here's $100. We're going to give you this $100 over the course of the semester and let's see if you can grow it. We're going to give you several pieces of education over the semester and see what this $100 turns into by the end of the semester. Never once did they do that. So already you've been misinformed about what is the dominant measure in your life. You see, you spend your first 18 years of life in the schooling system. Now you're about to spend 80 years, 8 decades outside of the schooling system, where the number one metric is financial, yet you've never had the schooling system put money in your hands and say, hey, grow this. So that's number one. You don't even know what life is really about. Number two, the how of making money. The how of making money involves teamwork, copying, which is also known as collaboration. In school, if you collaborate on a test, what do they call that?
Cheating?
Cheating. If you collaborate on a test, it's called cheating. In school, the test is what really matters. The examination, that's what really matters. And during the examination, you just have to use your own brain, one brain. In business, you'd be a fool to think you're going to do it by yourself. So in school, the individual who pretends to be a genius because they're doing it all by themselves, they're the winner. They can get the A all day by themselves. It's the only way. But in business, you must form a team and use everyone's brain. That's how you're successful. But you're conditioned against that in school. And that collaboration is called cheating in school. And if you execute that during school, you get punished. So now you've been conditioned out of that.
Okay, on PayPal, we have Jundle said, peace to the
Peace
saints.
to the saints. Furthermore, in the rare instances in school where they give you group work, they never have you identify a leader. It's never a case where you got 5 people in a group and one person says, hey, I'm the leader, I'm the boss. All of you guys are, I might ask you your opinion, but mostly I'm telling you, and you're going to do what I say do so we can be efficient. Because that's actually kind of how things work in real life, which is to say that you ever been at your job and your manager or your boss says, hey, do this. And you say, well, actually, I think, nah, you don't really get a say in that. So it's actually not conditioning you for a realistic corporate environment, generally speaking. So they condition you away from collaboration. They don't teach you how to operate on proper teams in the way that it actually operates in corporate life in general. Most importantly, you're taught to be passive. Your entire learning experience is passive. And what I mean by that is you're sitting, not moving. And if you have something to say, you have to raise your hand. And the teacher has the option to say yes or no, you can speak. And they use that exact same model from when you're a 7-year-old child through when you're a 17-year-old pseudo adult, but they ain't treating you like an adult. You even have to ask permission to go to the restroom. None of what you do in high school or middle school is self-managed. And what I mean by that is you're assigned homework. You never get to pick your homework. You're assigned classwork. You're told what books to read. Everything is assigned. Everything is dictatorial from the teacher, which means that you will never get the entrepreneur mindset of self-management. You're told what time to come to school. Everything is dictated to you, but you're never taught how to dictate. You're dictated to, but you're never taught how to dictate to others. The teacher's kind of your boss, but they never teach you how to be a boss. That's why we have Boss University. And the important thing is this: when you're constantly being dictated to, there's a comfort level there. This is what causes people to become comfortable. You get in the mindset of, okay, the teacher's taking care of everything. They're doing all the real thinking. So if the teacher says, okay, today I'm going to teach you about the Pythagorean theorem. Okay, cool. Your homework tonight, I want you to use the Pythagorean theorem. So You go and you follow the directions, you use the theorem, and you come back, you turn in your homework, you got an A. Fantastic. You didn't have to do any real thinking. You just had to perform directly what you were taught. What you failed to do was figure out anything. You know, the guy, I think his name is Pythagoras, the guy who figured out the theorem, he had to think. But you were not taught about that part. You were not taught about the mathematical proofs that one goes through to figure something out. So now you've been dropped into the real world. You can't figure out anything about your life or about what you want to be. You can't figure out the answers to your own problems and challenges because you've been taught that you're going to be told the directions on how to solve the problem, and the problems are going to be predictable. But in real life, the problems are not predictable. That's why when I tell you guys school, university is the easiest part of your life, is because every problem you experience, whether that problem is called a midterm, a final exam, a term paper, you were warned about all of it. How were you warned? It's called a syllabus. It tells you what's going to occur. In life, there is no syllabus. In entrepreneurship, there is no syllabus. And let me tell you the biggest conditioning error that's occurring in the human experience in schooling. You don't experience something called risk. So you're going to be risk averse. What do I mean by that? Well, you're going to be scared to take a chance because you ain't been taking chances this whole way through. And that makes perfect sense because your teachers are mostly females because the teaching profession is dominated by women. And women are risk averse by nature, which is fine because they never had to take lead before. Even today, when they're in positions of leadership, they're really not in positions of leadership. They're in situations where they're following scripts. Yeah. They rarely innovate. When you look at the most innovative companies in America and you look at the executives and the founders who actually created or invented something, none of them are women because they're not risk embracing biologically. They're not wired to embrace risk. They have to be willing to be wrong. They have to be willing to fail. They have to be willing to be embarrassed to be an entrepreneur. School is organized around the idea of doing it right, generally the first time. For example, if you get a midterm or you get an exam or you get a quiz, you get to take the quiz one time and you're expected to do it right the first time to get your B or A grade. If you don't do it right the first time, you fail. And that ain't good. But in life, you get infinite redos, you get infinite do-overs. And in entrepreneurship and in business, you can crash a business, you can crash a product and go build another one. But you were taught to take it so seriously if you mess up because you got an F. It's okay if you get an F on your business and you turn around and get an A on the next business that makes you $1,000,000. The funny thing about entrepreneurship versus school, shall we say, I want to point out some things that make the story a bit more complete. You hear people say dumb things all the time on the internet. I hear fools say things like, oh, Mark Zuckerberg didn't go to college. He dropped out of Harvard. First off, he did go to college. You said he dropped out of Harvard. That means he went to college. So you're a fool. This is very common. Secondly, he dropped out of Harvard. Big difference between dropping out of Harvard and dropping out of like Cal State, fill in the blank, never heard of it, right? If you drop out of Harvard, that means you were smart enough and competent enough and you had enough background to get into Harvard. So the person who can get into Harvard, if they drop out of Harvard, I'm sure they can figure out how to win. Why? Because what I understand about the higher university system, and I say this as an expert, this was my business for many years. Higher education, especially when you're looking at the elite universities, so say the top 50, they never take a fool and turn the fool into a genius. They take people who are already very diligent, from good families, well to do, educated, and ambitious. They take them in the front door as educated, ambitious young people, and they push them out the back door as educated, ambitious young people. They do not add value in a significant way to the human being. Yes, maybe the experience of intelligent people being among one another, but Berkeley didn't turn me into a smart person. I went into Berkeley with a near perfect SAT score. I went into Berkeley being the smartest guy at my school by far. Not the best grades. I had terrible grades, but by far the smartest guy at my school, smartest guy at the community college. Yeah. So what you have to understand is that when someone pushes the narrative of Mark Zuckerberg dropped out of Harvard, well, yeah, that means he was smart enough to get into Harvard. So if he drops out, he drops out. He's still a smart guy. He's going to be able to function, which is to say he has superior IQ to most people. So it wouldn't be wise for us to look at him as a model for the average human being when his IQ and his circumstances, which is to say his parents are wealthy, they're educated, they have good connections. His circumstances are remarkably different from the average person. So when you have imbeciles on the internet saying, "Oh, well, Bill Gates dropped out of college, Mark Zuckerberg dropped out of college," it's like, well, you're not white, you're not Jewish, you don't come from a wealthy family, and your parents are not about to lend you $30,000. So these are important things. Let me give you some real data. A college graduate versus a non-college graduate, on average, the college graduate makes over $1 million more than this person over a lifetime. That is data. That is what you really need to know. But let's talk a little bit more about school right after this.
Okay, we have It's Vic said, my 16-year-old nephew has no proper male guidance in his life and lacks a sense of urgency. His mom will try to have him out by 18. I want to help before it's too late, but my assistance is limited.
There's not a question there. So I'll say, this is a common story. The sad thing is that in the West, particularly among the African Americans, their families are so broken. The single mothers are so low IQ and delusional, generally speaking, that they have this foolish concept that their responsibilities as a parent end at age 18. This is very lower class thinking. In many other societies, in Pakistan, even in Italy, in Muslim communities and very religious communities, they'll allow the children to stay there until they marry. And then once the girl is married, then she'll go off to live with her husband. Or once the young man is about to marry a woman, then he'll purchase a home. This allows them to utilize, family economics more effectively and to be watched over and guided. The African American single mother, being foolish and under stress, and also not understanding what family is, and having been disconnected from her heritage and culture, she's been miseducated in the worst way by the society and by her single mom. And so she pushes out her own child into a world that generally they're not prepared for. This young man who lacks a sense of urgency, it's unfortunate, and you should not hurt yourself trying to help him, but do be a guide and offer your assistance and spend time with him when you can, because sometimes just being around and being visible itself has an effect.
Okay, we have Helly9 who already came in and said this was his first live stream and he recently found you. He said, just purchased Bosch University. Looking forward to it.
All
Got to
right.
head out, but have a great rest of your stream.
Now that man has a sense of urgency, and that's one thing I've learned in business is that if you see that one lacks a sense of urgency, they're not going to get anything done. If someone has a sense of urgency, you know that this is the woman that you're actually going to go out on the date with. She's going to show up. She's not going to cancel. This is the person that the sale is going to convert. This is the business partner that's going to be productive with you. A sense of urgency is basically saying that there's an underlying emotion and ambition driving productivity. A person who has a lack of urgency, it's an uninspired person. And sometimes that's the heaviest lift. I'd rather deal with someone running in the wrong direction than someone that's just standing still.
Carry on.
Yes, which is to say, I think it's probably easier to take an active gang member who's an ambitious gang member and turn them into a business person than it is to take a middle class snot nosed kid who just likes to play video games and doesn't really do anything with like fervor. Yes, you must have a passion to really get anything done in this world. With the schooling system, the schooling system conditions you around the false idea that things will be predictable for you in life. It conditions you around the false idea that there should always be a superstructure around you telling you what to do. So when we have the man child concept today, where you have grown men, but they expect their mother to take care of them, or they expect the government to give them money, whether it's a stimulus check or what have you, which I didn't even want the stimulus check. I ain't accept it. You dig? But they expect someone else to tell them what to do or to show them the path to walk. And that's because the schooling system never taught you actual critical thinking. All it ever did was give you the assignment and then give you the grade, put a tremendous amount of pressure on you converting in your one attempt on the exam or quiz. And I'm not saying that it's not important to perform on quizzes and exams. It's terribly important. And I performed really well. I was much better at that than homework and classwork because I wasn't in class and I ain't do no homework. But the point is that in real life, uh, there's nothing where you get one chance. Generally you always get a redo, and persistence is the thing that overcomes resistance. That's the most important lesson that you did not get in high school. The other lesson that you didn't get in high school is that the time, like, what everyone else is doing has nothing to do with you. This is really important. I hope you guys get this. What everyone else is doing has nothing to do with you. Listen to me. Someone DM that to me on Instagram because that's deeper than you realize. What everyone else is doing has nothing to do with you. DM me that on Instagram. I'm about to unpack that. Listen to me. When you're in elementary school, middle school, high school, you're in class with people based on your age, which means your parents had sex around the same time of year. That's what that means, right? Your parents all had sex around the same time of year. That's about what that means, isn't it? Which means you really don't have anything in common except your age. How is it you're in a class of 30 people? This kid wants to be a doctor. This kid wants to be a football player. This kid wants to be a lawyer. This kid wants to be a teacher. This weird kid wants to be a luminary. This kid wants to be a gamer. This girl wants to be a TikTok thought, but you're all in the same class. What sense does that make? It makes no sense at all. Major failing of the school system is that they group together people with disparate interests, disparate skills, radically different levels of ability to remember and recall information, different IQ levels. You're all grouped together based on age, not ambition, not pursuit. And that's foolish. And what the schooling process does over time is it makes you think that you're similar to people that you're not similar to. What? Yes. It makes you think you're similar to people you're not similar to. Check this out. My mom calls me almost every day and she'll ask me, "Oh, hey, Mark, have you talked to so and so?" Name it, fill in the blank with somebody I grew up in the hood with. Like, no. "Oh, have you talked to so and so?" Mom, no, I haven't. "Why haven't you talked to so and so?" "Because so and so works at TJ Maxx." And there's nothing wrong with TJ Maxx, but he's working at TJ Maxx and I'm building a technology company. We don't have a lot to talk about. The only reason we were friends is because we grew up on the same block. We lived near each other. Now we live in different states and we have radically different ambitions, family circumstances. Everything's different. We can't even share a joke anymore. I realize that. My mother doesn't realize that. And maybe that friend doesn't realize that. School conditions you to think that you're similar to people you're not similar to because they grouped you all together for no meaningful reason. And for the reason that you're grouped together, you begin to foolishly believe, well, I'm with all these people. Well, what are they going to do? Let's follow the crowd. Oh, everyone's going to college. I'm going to college. That's what everyone's doing. So now you understand how you've been conditioned into groupthink, the worst kind of groupthink. Huh? Shout out to Tommy. He writes, "Peace to the Saints. How do I deal with older average people trying to give me advice on how to be successful?" Isn't that hilarious? It cracks me up. Bro, I cannot tell you how often people who have nothing try to slide in remarks. And you know what? I'm extremely rude in response. I'm not going to lie to you. Now, I'm not advising you to go be rude to your grandma when she tell you how to make the bag. But me, I'm extremely rude because I want them to know I'm not taking your free advice. And more importantly, I don't want you poisoning other people with your stupidity. Yeah, I'm not going to take advice from a pauper on how to be a prince. He writes, "I want to dismiss them politely because I don't believe I'm listening to because I don't believe in listening to charlatans. Well, you know what? You can dismiss yourself. You can leave the environment, but don't you waste any amount of time, because most people, all they have are stories, not reality. They just got stories. I can't tell. It's hard for me to deal with people on the planet Earth, because you know what they like to do? They like to observe what I've done or what I have, and they want to talk about what they're about to do. Not interested. Not interested. Or they want to tell me how to run. Like, I kid you not, all love to my mother. My mother's even advised me on what I should be doing and saying on YouTube. I'm like, oh, mom, what's your YouTube channel? Oh, you don't have a YouTube channel. Oh, okay. Well, what's your net worth? Oh, okay. So what are you advising me on? Come on, like, tell me about something you know about. Like, if I want to learn how to clean some chitlins, I would ask you. If I want what, if I want to learn how to do something that like you're great at, I'm gonna ask you. But don't advise me on doing things you haven't done. One thing my mother's really good at, she's great at saving money. Like if I want to learn how to save money, I would ask my mom. If I want to learn how to hustle up some money really quickly, I'd ask my mom. She knows how to do that. But there are other things that people are not self-reflective, so they're always trying to tell you how to do things they don't have the foggiest idea on how to do. You're dealing with people who are ignorant, meaning they are without knowledge, and most fools don't know that they're a fool. That's a condition of being a fool. You're also dealing with people who are jealous. They're jealous of you, of what you have, of what your potential is. And when you have people who may be either a fool or jealous, or what's worse, both a jealous fool, this is what happens. For example, I saw one person had sent me a message, and I was just thinking, why are you taking out your time to do this? They sent me a message. They said, "Hey, Marquette, I just want to tell you, I think you fell off on YouTube. If you want my 2 cents, I'm happy to talk through it with you." And in my head, I'm like, "You're broke. I don't want to hear anything from you. Frankly, I just want you to stay away from me. Like, don't message me. I'm a busy businessman. I don't have time to read your silly messages. Like, I don't want you to message me when I'm out in the world low key. I don't really want anybody to say anything except peace to the saints. And if you're one of the members that's love, come give me a pound. You heard me? We might go get something to eat. We might catch a workout. But if we don't have any business dealings, or you're not one of the saints, I don't want you around me. I don't want to hear your advice, because your advice is worth nothing. And this is how I know it's worth nothing. My advice is valuable. That's why I get paid to give it. But one thing you'll never see, if you ever spent time with me out in the public, you will never see me volunteer advice, because I'm wise enough to know most people don't want good advice, because they're not actually trying to improve their lives. Most people talk about money and they talk about poverty, but they're not really trying to get rich. They just need something to talk about because they're bored. Most people are bored. They live lives completely devoid of meaning. But I found it chuckle worthy. I'm looking at this dude. I'm like, bro said I fell off on YouTube. And I'm like, here's the funny thing. Like, I was never trying to get on YouTube. Like, I've been on. Like, my life is good. I'm Porsche shopping. Like, my biggest issue right now is that I cannot get the folding tables in the back of the Porsche. That's my biggest issue right now. Going on YouTube is not a big issue for me, because I lose money. I go on YouTube when I have a powerful message to tell to you. That's why I'm here, to inspire. But I'm not here to be on. And here's the thing, only a dummy uses the term fall off. Fall off? What are you talking about? Money is the measure. I don't make money on YouTube. So when I'm not on YouTube, you can guess I'm making money. So I'm winning. But only a fool would say something like that. And I want you guys, don't allow your minds to be punished, or to be what's the word? Not polluted by fools. Just imagine a guy who's actually broke was about to give me advice. And he, in his mind, he thought that I was gonna be like, oh yeah, like, yeah, broke guy, let me have a phone call with you and hear how to make a better YouTube channel. Like, no, I know YouTubers. My cars are better. My house is better. Everything is better than the YouTubers. I would never try to become good at being a YouTuber. That's silly. When I'm not on YouTube, I'm still getting paid. Like, they're not learning. You see what I'm saying? So watch your company.
Okay, we have on PayPal, Barak said, peace to the saints.
Peace of the saints.
Walton came back and said, how would you group students if you had to revamp the education system since age is not a very meaningful basis?
I would group them on competence. So the first thing I would do is I would have them all take a pre-assessment, and we'd be able to assess their skills in the three critical areas, namely arithmetic, mathematics, reading and writing, and a third category that's critical for development. And once we have the students assessed based on that, I would group them together based on their levels of competence so that we can actually remediate effectively. And then once the students have reached a certain age, like say 13, when they're starting to develop and display prowess in a particular area of learning, I say, okay, these kids are sharp in mathematics. These are sharp in language. These ones are sharp with good work ethic. These kids are good with their hands. Okay, these kids are going to a vocational track. These kids are going into legal. These kids are going into engineering. These kids are going here. And they would all be in those tracks. That is how it would be properly grouped. And truth be told, at the end of high school, I wouldn't send anyone in the university. I'd send everyone to apprenticeship to study or to shadow or to observe the profession so they know what it actually is. Very few people who want to become a lawyer know what the day-to-day affair of a lawyer is. For example, when I look at judges and lawyers, I'm not impressed with them at all, especially those who actually have to go into court to litigate. You know, and we're going to do a live for the members only about my last court experience, which was hilarious. But you're basically around ingrates and imbeciles and people trying to steal money, or you're around fools who are committing crimes. Lawyering is not a pleasant thing unless you're high up doing business law and you don't have to go into court and you're using arbitration as a means to an end.
Okay, on PayPal, Jay Millions is back and said being ruthless about who you're around is essential.
Is critical. And I don't even consider it ruthless. I just consider it, self-respect. You dig? 3 Cents Bible, be yourself, be good to yourself, be good to good people. Number one, be yourself. But number two, be good to yourself. So understand this. There are certain places, and we're gonna have a conversation about this. So that's why I invited you to the office. I want to like go through those institutions and identify the ones that are no longer worthy of my
Okay.
presence. So there's certain restaurants I don't go to. I don't want to be seen there. I don't want to be around the people who frequent that restaurant. You dig? Because it's not good enough for me. I'm too good for it. And it's okay to think like that. In fact, you'd be blessed to feel like that. Huh? Because this is what you should understand. There are certain places that when you're there, you meet people of high quality. Huh? Just being there. And then there's also the quality of experience and service. Like for example, I'd went down to a bakery today, and so I valeted to go into this bakery. And when I got out of the car, you know what I'm talking about,
Yeah, but
huh?
that sounds ridiculous.
What?
Valeting to go to a bakery.
But you know what I'm talking
I do.
about, yeah. So I valeted the car to go to this bakery, right? And this one guy was about to like write down my name and give me the valet ticket. This is really cool. I wish you were there. He's about to like, oh, hey, yeah, I forgot what's your name, and he's about to write to give me the ticket. And then the other valet comes over like, oh, he's good, he's good. Just leave his car right there. He doesn't need a ticket. That's the life experience that I like. You heard me? Now you can imagine this is a very exclusive place to where their client base is small enough that they're like, I know him by face. We don't need to write it down or put it in the computer. Let him go about his business. Now, on the other hand, if I was at like a random place that a lot of people frequent and they got hundreds of customers a day, one, there's no valet. Number one. Number two, you're gonna get bad service. You're gonna be around ghetto people who are foolish, and you're in a dangerous environment, low key. Almost got killed today, by the way, in the car. It was crazy. I like, I don't, I got to start driving very early in the morning because you feel me. I don't plan on dying of natural causes, but I don't want to die in a foolish way, like in a car accident. You feel me? Or getting breast implants like Kanye West mom. I don't want to die like that. You heard me? I want a heroic death. I want one of these haters to finally take me out when I'm like 70. You dig? Or I want to go out like Kevin Samuels, smacking down a thick thoroughbred. School's a funny thing. Most people go to school and they don't get the right things out of school. What school's supposed to teach you is one, how to be disciplined, which is to say consistent, do things on a regular basis. Here's what most people gather out of school. Instead of homework being something that enhances you and teaches you the necessity of practice, what they're really trying to do, because the homework assignments are not interesting or meaningful for their long-term goal or even their short-term idea of what they want to be, they try to get the homework done as quickly as possible, which means the process of doing the homework didn't teach them anything. It was not edifying. I hear foolish kids, or rather, I see in the comments, and I did a video on the backup channel about Chat GPT as well as artificial intelligence, which I think I've probably been the most meaningful commentator on that because I'm in the tech business um, and also in business. You got young people saying, "Oh, I use Chat GPT to write that paper." Well, so you're telling me you're going to college and you're paying $15,000 a year to be there, right? And then the professor, who is essentially the person you're paying $15,000 to, they tell you to do an assignment and you use Chat GPT to do the assignment as though the professor did not have a logic to why they want you to write out the paper, to go through the thought process, to identify arguments, and to struggle back and forth with the pros and cons of this particular subject. You skipped all that and used Chat GPT, which means you're paying $15,000 and not getting any value out of your investment. You're an idiot. And there's a lot of you. And the reason that you're in school using Chat GPT is because you went to school, went to college, because everyone else that was in your high school went to college. Huh? Nothing wrong with college, but there's a lot wrong with being in college for no reason. Nothing wrong with college, but there's a lot wrong with being in college, taking a degree in something that has no meaning. I remember one of the longest papers I ever wrote. It was a paper on the Hitler Youth, also known as the Hitler Jugend. And I wrote the paper. It was very long, extremely detailed. I still have the paper on my computer to this day. It was a great work. And I still think over what I wrote. I still apply the lessons to this day. And the reason I took out my time to think through it and write a good paper is because I always had a vision of what I would be, and what I was doing and studying was aligned. School is useful when it's aligned with what you're seeking to be. You heard me at the start of this talk say, I seek to be a luminary, one who inspires. If you're going to inspire people to improve their lives, much of the persons you inspire will be young persons in their youth. I studied the Hitler Jugend, wrote a long paper about it. And that was the largest boys' youth organization in the world at the time. A great model to teach you how to organize young men and get them to buy in such that you can grow them strong. Very useful.
Okay, Parker said, "What's the best books on self discipline? I want to know. Please, can you keep this video on your YouTube? Very educational."
I recommend that you check out Boss University because that is what is going to center you in one understanding what do you need to be disciplined about. Now, mind you, I'm not saying this to sell it because people who can't afford it are not ready for it. Let me say that. If you can't afford Boss University, that's perfect. You're not ready for it yet. Okay? Understand that. Now, for those who can afford it, it's teaching you the fundamentals of life. So, for example, people talk about self discipline. Question the foundations of everything. Well, why do you need to be self disciplined? To what end? For what purpose are you being self disciplined? Now, once we understand that more important thing of why be self disciplined, now we can figure out, well, what is self discipline? How am I going to be disciplined? It's easier to channel the energy when you know where the energy needs to go. Furthermore, there are different disciplines. There's the discipline of reading, which is radically different from the discipline of exercising. So when you say self discipline, what are you talking about? And you don't need to be good at everything. There are some things that you need to say, I am not going to do that. Either it's beneath me or I'm just not good at it. I'm going to let somebody who is good at it do it. Or I don't have the time. Or I need to let someone else do it because I have a lot of businesses. So I have to utilize the skills, brains, and talents of other persons. Or I can't be everywhere at once. Like, for example, I'm blessed and honored to have Josiah as an executive in Florida. He's a great man. He's a strong man. He's a disciplined man. He's a focused man. He's an honest man. So I know he's going to be there and do things as good or better than I would have done them. And the assassin grows with great leaders like him because I cannot be in South Florida and Chicago and Europe and Las Vegas at the same time.
Bobby just got Bosch University.
Shout out to Bobby.
Carry on.
School, good old school. School's a funny thing because I have a memory of school I want to share with you guys. School is oriented on the female modes of learning and behavior. Things that are outside of the feminine way are pathologized and they're made to be a problem. Nowadays, we even have a term called toxic masculinity, which means a man being himself. Isn't that funny? It's a man being himself. The mode of learning in school is feminine. And all of the things outside of that are pathologized and made to seem problematic. And this is how school has wrongly conditioned some people, mostly males, into thinking that they have learning disabilities. In some cases, they've been taught that they have mental retardation. They've been taught that they have oppositional defiance disorder. They've been taught that they have learning disabilities, and they've been given what are called IEPs, individualized educational plans. All of these things to suggest that there's something wrong with them when really there's nothing wrong with them. Everything is right with them. They're a natural male. When I was in Baltimore teaching sixth grade, one of the things I did with my boys is that we actually did performance activity. We did physical, tactile activities to experience the learning because boys are physical. They don't sit in the chair and raise their hand every time they have something to say. They're physical, they're impulsive, they have outbursts. That's a part of being a male. That's the biology of us. Now, let me teach you what's dangerous about the female conditioning in the educational system when they try to rip that out of you and turn you into a female. Make you behave like a female. That's why females are so good at school, because school is based on following directions. And that's their wiring: submission, following directions. Only funny thing is that the feminist society tries to tell them not to follow your directions, but they excel in school because they're great at following directions. And that's what school is all about.
Carry on.
Male behavior is made a problem of. Here's the worst thing about the schooling experience is that it has you go through the recitation of knowledge, but not the demonstration of knowledge, the true demonstration. So, for example, I could teach my kids about the civil rights movement and explain to them what protests occurred and what sit-ins occurred and what rallies and marches and speeches occurred. I could explain that lecture style, which is mostly what happens in school. And then I could have them take an exam or do assignments in class and then do homework and then take an exam on that. Great. What I did as a teacher, because this really arms you, it makes you competent, it allows you to actually do something. It gives you the entrepreneur's instinct. I said, we are going to do the civil rights movement. We're not going to learn about it. We're going to do it. You're Martin Luther King. You're Malcolm X. You're Medgar Evers. You're the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Practice your speeches. You got 1 week. You're going to come in and do the speech. We're going to have a protest in the front of this school. We're going to do it. Now they have the experience of doing it, which means that it makes them conditioned to be a doer, not a talker, not a person who can write out what was told and lectured to them. Now they experience the feeling that maybe Martin Luther King had when he was standing there and there was an audience and he said, I have a dream today. And they went through the whole thing. Now they have a deeper understanding of what it really was. Passive, feminine way. Teacher lectures, you listen silently, soak it up, do the assignment, do the homework, write out what they told you. That's passive, that's very feminine. What I did was experiential learning, expeditionary learning, activity-based learning. You now feel the learning experience, but more importantly, what I empowered these kids with, all the other kids in the other schools who are the same age, they could never say, oh, I've given a speech in front of 30 people. They couldn't say, oh, I know what it means when you say protest. I know what it means when you say sit in. I know what it feels like. Yeah, I kid you not. I had kids sit in and I had the other kids play the racist people who didn't want them there, who were yelling and cursing at, not literally cursing at them, but yelling and harassing them to give the kids the feeling of what that experience was. And what does that do? It builds something in you, it builds a toughness. And more importantly, they now have a black box, which is to say a point of reference, a black box, a point of reference for doing something. And they know how things get done in the world. School does not condition you around experience and actually doing. It makes you passive in that you're always waiting to respond rather than being proactive, and you don't take any risks.
Darius is back and said, any updates on those children who grew up under you when you were in Maryland?
I don't keep in contact with them. It's actually quite dangerous. This is a very good question. I say it's quite dangerous because remember, there's an era of hashtag me too, right? Now that was adult women accusing successful men of doing fill in the blank. Now just imagine, I'm a grown man when I'm teaching the kids. What am I going to keep in personal contact with minors? Of course not. So those are things that we have to be hyper conscious of in our society because we don't live in a community. That's why the assassin is so important. And I always welcome people when they come to Saint City. And I love to know that people are co-located in the various regions that we have because we don't have community. When there's an absence of community, there's a presence of mistrust. And because there's mistrust, I can't, as a grown man, keep in contact with children because it's suspicious, it's viewed with it's viewed poorly, right? So for my own protection, I would never do that. But say you did live in a community, say we lived in a community of all saints, and one of the saints was the teacher of our children. Yeah, surely we'd want them to keep in contact and they'd be interested to know how the kids are progressing with the teachings that they gave. And it will be completely normal because the parents know that teacher. Most of my parents I didn't know, even though I was teaching 11-year-olds. And the reason I didn't know most of my parents is because they were absentee parents. They didn't show up to teacher conferences. They didn't really involve themselves in the kids' lives. They're single mothers teaching, with 3 jobs. Some of the kids were raised by their grandparents because their parents died of drug overdose. So these kids were very much so uncared for. And I write about a lot of it in my book, The Black Box, which is my best offering to these kids is illuminating some of what they've suffered. I remember when I was 16 years old, because my grades were so poor in high school, I had to take an exam to test out of high school. At which point I started at community college. I did double full time, which is a full time load is about 12 credit hours or 12 units, and I did 24. And I remember in a number of those courses, one, they're taught by female professors and they're overpopulated with females. And I remember in one of those courses, anytime that I had a differing opinion and I would speak on it, one time, I kid you not, the professor even took me outside. They paused the class, took me outside, and said, "Hey, you're hurting people's feelings." You might be wondering, like, what was the debate about? The debate was about Drew Barrymore, an actress who's a former drug addict, about her running for political office. And I raised my hand. I said, frankly, I think in a country of 360 million persons, I don't think we need a drug addict to run for office. I bet we have plenty of people who are probably a little bit more solid and reliable who can run for office. I think it's quite arrogant of her, while she's not fully recovered from drug addiction, to run for office and put all of us at risk, with her possible, you know, uh, breakdowns occurring. So I said this, and the professor paused the class, took me outside, and basically said, "You would hurt people's feelings." And I said, "Well, how, Sway?" And then she says, "Well, you don't know. There's people in our class right now who might be suffering drug addiction." I said, "That's fine. That doesn't negate the fact that they shouldn't run for governor. I mean, come on now." And she's like, "Look, I don't want to hear any more of this from you." I was like, "All right, cool." Now here's the thing, that was an improper conversation. That conversation should have never happened. That was ridiculous. And what she was trying to do was turn me into a broad. You heard me? She wasn't teaching me how to exercise better etiquette. I wasn't being vulgar. She was trying to turn me into a broad and get me to agree with the other side and to be sensitive to things that we need not be sensitive to. One of the major strengths of a man is that men live by principle, and we say yes or no, and I won't have it, and that's not good enough, and we're going to live in this way. That's a man's life. A woman's life is to be caring and loving. That's why they can love their children no matter what. Even when their children are screw ups, they can love their kids. Men, we generally have a standard. We expect the kid to do something, produce something. Huh? To none of the above.
Adana said, Saint, in which ways would Bosch University benefit a highly advanced man, someone who may already be a boss in their sphere of influence?
So, one of the big things for me is thinking about it in terms of life mastery. You know, if you're a boss in business, the question is, do you feel like you're getting close to life mastery in terms of, wow, I'm happy every day. You know, the people around me regard me very well, not only the people who work for me, but also, my family, the women that are under my leadership. And I'm pushing towards something that is causing me to consistently embrace risk and make big ripples in the world. Like, for example, right now, one of the things that we're building is Man and Woman Day, the holiday. And we know that this is going to ruffle some feathers. We're trying to build a coalition of the different religious and ethnic communities. We're trying to have this as an in-person holiday, which hopefully will spark an international holiday. We're going to start it in Dallas, and there's a lot of different parties to engage around this. We even got to get permits and get permission to do this at a particular location in Dallas. And mind you, the government's slow; they haven't even responded to us. But the fact is that if you're a boss in business, now the question is, well, what's the next level for you? And so for me, the next level, making more money is that's cool, but what am I going to do with more money other than like find another rare car that's hard to get, especially with these supply chain issues? What am I going to do with more money? Buy another $1,000 pair of shoes that are just a duplicate of shoes I already have and they're in a different color. So what you're shaking your head like, yes, you think I'm gonna get the black Pradas?
For sure.
You funny. I was thinking about them today. I ain't gonna lie to you. But anyways, the point is the next level of being a boss is how are you driving improvement in the society as a leader in the society? Are you worthy of that? Can you do that? Are you willing to embrace that risk? That's where it should be taking you. So that's the drive. But I tell you, if you're ever satisfied with something in life, everything's not for everybody. And I want to be clear with all watching right now. Everything is not for everybody. So if you don't hear about some of the things I mentioned about Boston University and say, I need that, then you don't need it. You don't need it. You should be suspicious of people who want to sell you any and everything, like people who just are sure that you need what they're selling. Those people are dishonest. If you feel like you got it together, and if any of the things I've already mentioned that they don't seem like you need that, skip it. Skip it. But I think a lot of you guys will like that piece on how do you master the self? How do you engage more spiritually in this world? How do you make sure that you're happy every day? How do you learn how to thrive in business, create good systems? So many things. It's going to be quite a lengthy course.
Calm Cam said, I absolutely enjoyed this stream, Saint. Great topic. It confirmed a lot of thoughts I've had on my experience in the education system. Appreciate all the gems.
Truly a pleasure. And another thing I want to remind you guys about the schooling system and how it tries to feminize you. Um, it puts you around certain personalities, and there's an assumption that there's a certain way that we should all be behaving, which is basically like a woman, which is fine. Um, but what I need you to understand is that that is not a representation of the real world or how the real world does work or how the real world should work. And what I mean is this: people who love school, that's a personality. I recall when I got out of university and I went into a program called Teach for America because I was an optimistic kid and I wanted to help people. I wanted to help kids who came from similar circumstances as myself, poverty, both material and mental. So I ended up teaching in Baltimore. And I remember being around the teachers and trainings and things like that. And I was always thinking, like, man, I'm not like you guys. I'm not one of you guys. And even my students would tell me, like, I kid you not, I had a student I taught in Philadelphia, a high school kid, a girl. And I remember her saying, Mr. Burton, you too cool to be a teacher, Mr. Burton, which is true. I am. I shouldn't have been a teacher. I was out of alignment for a time. But the point is, Every time there was a social opportunity to be around these personalities, these school loving personalities, these rule based personalities. They don't create the rules; they just follow the rules. These all these women, these feminine personalities, they would always rebuke me, just like the saint had said earlier. He's around old heads, like trying to give them advice and things like that. Like they're just basically rebuking who I am and trying to give me advice to make me more like them, to make me more like them. Well, it turns out I took my own advice and I have more money than all of them added together, and more influence than all of them added together. So it seems like I knew what I was doing. Now, here's the funny thing: if you were to ask them today, they'd still like make up some crazy story on how you know how they've had a meaningful life. But the point is this: a man knows his own road, and school does not teach you what your own road is. A man knows his own road. A man seeks his own road. A man is an explorer. A man is a risk taker. You have to have experience. You have to scrape your knee, bruise your elbow, break a bone, have an experience, take a risk, get hurt, try something to find what is meant for you. School gives you none of those experiences and it conditions you away from embracing those experiences. That is the chief problem of the public schooling system and how it miseducates most of us. And for the male, how it effeminizes us and in many ways dehumanizes us.